The story begins with a terrifying choice that instantly changes everything. In a world controlled by ruthless criminals, loyalty is worth more than human life, and anyone who betrays the organization can expect a brutal death. But when one of the gang's most feared enforcers suddenly decides to protect an innocent child, he becomes the target of the very people he once served. What follows is a violent fight for survival, filled with betrayal, revenge, brotherhood, and some of the most intense martial arts action imaginable. The Night Comes for Us is a 2018 Indonesian action crime thriller directed by Timo Cahyanto and starring Joe Taslim as Ito, Iko Uwais as Aryan, and Zack Lee as Tino. The film is built around the brutal world of the Six Seas, a powerful criminal organization that controls territory through fear and violence. Ito is one of its most dangerous members, a man who has spent years carrying out orders without hesitation. He has earned a terrifying reputation because of his ability to eliminate enemies with almost no mercy. But after witnessing the organization commit an unforgivable act against an innocent young girl, something inside him finally changes. The movie opens in a remote village where Ito and several other members of the Six Seas are carrying out a massacre. The criminals move through the area with complete control, killing people and destroying anything that stands in their way. Their mission is simple: eliminate everyone who could threaten the organization's power. Ito follows the orders, but when he discovers a little girl named Reina hiding among the bodies, he realizes that she is the only survivor. Instead of killing her like he has been ordered to do, Ito makes a decision that will put his own life in danger. He saves the girl and turns against the organization. Ito takes Reina away from the village, knowing that the Six Seas will never allow him to escape with her. He understands exactly what he has done. He has not simply disobeyed an order. He has betrayed one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the region. The moment he chooses to protect Reina, his former allies become his enemies. Ito knows they will hunt him down, but he refuses to hand the girl back to them. For the first time in his life, he is fighting for something other than himself. Ito eventually returns to Jakarta and seeks help from people connected to his old life. His arrival creates tension because everyone knows the organization will come looking for him. He tries to keep Reina hidden while figuring out how to protect her. But the Six Seas are already aware of his betrayal, and they send some of their most dangerous fighters to bring him back or eliminate him. Meanwhile, Ito's former friend Aryan becomes involved in the situation. Aryan is not an ordinary criminal. He is intelligent, calculating, and extremely dangerous, with his own history with Ito. Their friendship has been damaged by years of violence and competing loyalties, but there is still an unspoken connection between them. Aryan understands Ito better than most people, which makes their eventual confrontation even more personal. As Ito prepares for what is coming, the organization begins closing in. One group after another is sent to find him, and every encounter becomes more violent. Ito is forced to fight his way through heavily armed criminals and skilled martial artists. But the biggest danger is not simply the number of enemies. The real danger is that the people coming after him know exactly how he thinks and how he fights. The situation becomes even more complicated when Ito realizes that protecting Reina means confronting the entire criminal network. He cannot simply hide forever. If he wants the girl to survive, he must stand against the people who trained him, trusted him, and turned him into a weapon. His decision has transformed him from an enforcer into a hunted man. And while Ito believes he may be able to survive the army coming after him, he has not yet faced the full force of the Six Seas. The organization has its own elite killers, each with different skills and terrifying methods of combat. Among them are fighters who are capable of taking on Ito and pushing him to his absolute physical limits. As night falls over Jakarta, the hunt begins in earnest. Ito knows that every door can hide an enemy, every phone call can reveal his location, and every person from his past could become a threat. But he refuses to abandon Reina. He has spent most of his life taking lives because someone else ordered him to. Now, for the first time, he is willing to risk his own life to save one. The decision sets off a chain reaction that will bring Ito face to face with old friends, deadly assassins, and an organization that has no intention of forgiving betrayal. The man who once served the Six Seas without question is now standing against them, and there is only one way this conflict can end. If you enjoy intense action movies, brutal martial arts battles, and powerful revenge stories, follow the channel, like the video, and leave a comment about your favorite action movie. Now, the real fight is about to begin. Ito knows that hiding Reina is only a temporary solution. The Six Seas organization has enormous influence, and their reach extends across the city. If they discover where Ito is staying, they will send killers immediately. But Ito has already made his choice. He is no longer willing to sacrifice an innocent life just because an organization demands it. For the first time, he is prepared to fight the people who once considered him one of their most valuable weapons. Ito takes Reina to a place where he believes he can remain hidden while he searches for a permanent way to get her out of the country. He understands that simply running away will not work. The organization will keep searching until they find them, and every person connected to Ito could become a target. His only hope is to find someone he can trust, although trust is something that has almost disappeared from his life. Back in the criminal world, Ito's betrayal becomes a major problem for the Six Seas. He is not just another low-level member who has disappeared. He is one of their elite enforcers, someone who knows important information about the organization's operations. More importantly, his decision to protect Reina could encourage others to question their own loyalty. The leaders cannot allow that possibility. They need to make an example of him. Aryan is eventually brought into the situation. Unlike the other criminals, Aryan has a complicated history with Ito. They were once close, and there was a time when they fought side by side. But their paths changed as the organization grew more powerful. Aryan became deeply involved in the criminal world, while Ito became one of the organization's most feared enforcers. Even though years have passed, The two men still understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Aryan is given the task of dealing with Ito, but his personal connection makes the situation complicated. He knows exactly how dangerous Ito can be when cornered. At the same time, Aryan has his own ambitions and does not intend to risk everything simply because of their old friendship. He understands that the organization rewards loyalty and destroys anyone who stands against it. Meanwhile, Ito begins preparing for the inevitable attack. He knows that eventually someone will find him. His injuries and exhaustion are already becoming a problem, but he refuses to slow down. Every moment he spends protecting Reina gives the organization more time to locate him. He needs information, weapons, and allies. Ito reaches out to people from his past, including members of the criminal underworld who still owe him favors. But the moment his name is mentioned, fear spreads. Nobody wants to become involved in a conflict with the Six Seas. The organization is too powerful, and anyone helping Ito could be punished alongside him. Then the first serious attack begins. A group of heavily armed criminals arrives with one simple objective: capture Reina and eliminate Ito. They believe the former enforcer will surrender once he realizes how many men are surrounding him. Instead, Ito prepares for battle. The attackers move into the building, expecting an easy victory, but Ito uses the environment to his advantage. He knows that fighting in narrow spaces can reduce the enemy's numerical advantage. One attacker rushes toward him, but Ito immediately strikes back, using speed and precision rather than wasting energy. Another enemy follows, and soon the quiet location turns into a violent battlefield. Ito's fighting style is direct and brutal. He does not fight for entertainment or glory. Every movement has one purpose: survive. He uses punches, elbows, knees, kicks, weapons, and anything else within reach. His opponents may have numbers on their side, but Ito has years of experience dealing with violence. The fight becomes increasingly intense as more enemies enter the building. Ito is struck repeatedly, but he keeps moving. He knows that stopping for even a few seconds could allow the attackers to overwhelm him. His body is beginning to suffer, but his determination becomes stronger because he knows Reina is nearby. At one point, Ito is forced into a desperate close-range fight where there is almost no room to move. He uses his opponent's momentum against him and manages to turn the situation around. One enemy after another falls, but Ito realizes something disturbing. These men are only the beginning. The Six Seas are testing him. They are sending fighters to weaken him before bringing in their most dangerous assassins. Ito understands that the organization knows he cannot fight forever. They want to exhaust him, isolate him, and eventually force him into a position where escape becomes impossible. After surviving the attack, Ito returns to Reina. The girl is terrified, but Ito tries to reassure her. He does not tell her everything because he knows she is already carrying enough trauma. Instead, he promises that he will protect her. That promise becomes the most important thing in Ito's life. But outside, the organization continues moving its pieces across the city. Aryan is getting closer, and unlike the ordinary criminals Ito has already defeated, Aryan knows exactly what Ito is capable of. Their confrontation is no longer a question of whether it will happen. It is only a question of when. And when these two former friends finally meet, their fight will reveal just how much their lives have changed. The situation becomes even more dangerous when Ito realizes that the Six Seas are not going to stop sending people after him. Every attack is more organized, more violent, and more personal than the last. He has managed to protect Reina so far, but his body is beginning to show the consequences of the constant fighting. He knows that if he continues moving from one hiding place to another, eventually he will make a mistake. What he needs is a way to disappear completely. But disappearing from an organization as powerful as the Six Seas is almost impossible. Ito decides that the safest option is to move Reina somewhere connected to people he once trusted. He contacts old associates and tries to arrange protection for her. But the criminal world has changed since he left it. People who once respected Ito are now afraid to even speak his name. Everyone knows that the Six Seas has marked him as a traitor, and helping him could mean becoming a target themselves. At the same time, Aryan continues following the trail. He has been given a direct order to find Ito, but he is not rushing into the confrontation. Aryan understands that Ito is unpredictable, especially when someone innocent is involved. Their history gives Aryan a unique advantage because he knows how Ito thinks. He knows that Ito will always prioritize protecting Reina over protecting himself, and that weakness can be exploited. But Aryan also remembers the man Ito used to be before everything changed. The two men fought together and trusted each other with their lives. They were not simply partners in the criminal organization, they were brothers in everything but blood. That relationship makes the current situation more painful. Aryan is now being forced to hunt the same man who once stood beside him. Ito eventually gets help from his old friend Fatih, who understands that the situation is far bigger than a simple disagreement between criminals. Fatih is willing to help Ito because he knows what the Six Seas is capable of. But helping Ito means entering a war that could destroy everyone involved. As they discuss their options, Ito explains that Reina must be kept alive at all costs. He does not care what happens to him anymore. His only concern is getting her away from the people who destroyed her family. Fatih realizes that Ito is serious and agrees to help. But before they can make a proper escape plan, another enemy appears. The Six Seas sends a highly trained fighter to locate Ito. This time, the attacker is not interested in negotiation. He knows that Ito is wounded and believes the former enforcer can finally be overwhelmed. What follows is another brutal confrontation. Ito is forced to fight while already exhausted. Every punch and kick hurts more than before, but he continues because surrender would mean giving Reina back to the organization. The attacker is faster than the previous criminals and knows how to fight at close range. For several moments, Ito is pushed backward and struggles to defend himself. The battle becomes a test of endurance. Ito takes heavy blows and crashes into walls and furniture, but he refuses to stay down. He uses his surroundings, grabbing whatever he can find and turning ordinary objects into weapons. The fight is chaotic and vicious. with neither man willing to retreat. Eventually, Ito manages to gain the advantage. He uses a sudden opening to strike his opponent and finishes the confrontation. But victory comes with a price. Ito is now even more injured, and he knows that stronger enemies will eventually arrive. Elsewhere, Aryan receives information about Ito's location. He understands that the time has come to make his move. Aryan begins gathering his own people. Unlike the random criminals sent earlier, these men are experienced killers. They know the streets, they know the underworld, and most importantly, they know that Ito will fight until his last breath. Aryan's plan is not simply to attack Ito directly. He wants to isolate him first. If he can separate Ito from his allies and remove every possible escape route, then Ito will eventually have no choice but to confront him. Meanwhile, Ito and Fatih try to move Reina to a safer location. They know they cannot remain where they are. Every minute increases the chance that someone will discover them. Reina is frightened, but Ito continues trying to keep her calm. For Ito, protecting Reina is no longer just about saving one child. She represents the last chance he has to prove that he is more than the killer the Six Seas created. For years, he believed violence was simply the way the world worked. Now he has finally realized that he can choose differently. But the organization does not care about his change of heart. They want the old Ito back, the ruthless enforcer who followed orders without asking questions. Since that man no longer exists, they have decided to destroy the new one. As night covers the city, Alien finally moves closer to Ito's position. The two former friends are approaching their inevitable confrontation, and neither of them knows whether their history will matter when the fighting begins. Ito looks at Reina and realizes that the next battle may be the most dangerous one yet. He knows Aryan is coming, and deep down he knows that if Aryan is the one standing between him and Reina's freedom, there may be no way to avoid fighting the man he once called his brother. The tension reaches a new level when Ito realizes that Aryan is no longer searching for him from a distance. He is moving directly toward him, and that changes everything. Ito knows Aryan better than almost anyone else. He knows how intelligent he is, how patient he can be, and how dangerous he becomes when he has a clear objective. Unlike the criminals Ito has already fought, Aryan does not need to prove anything. He simply needs to find the right moment to strike. Ito tries to move Reina again before Aryan can reach them, but the Six Seas has already begun closing every possible escape route. Their influence is everywhere, and people connected to Ito are becoming increasingly afraid. Fatih realizes that they cannot keep running through the city forever. Eventually, they will have to stand and fight. Meanwhile, Aryan begins assembling a group of skilled fighters. He knows that sending ordinary soldiers against Ito will only waste time. Ito has already survived several attacks, and every confrontation makes him more determined. Aryan needs people capable of matching Ito's brutality. Among the people hunting Ito are some of the most dangerous members of the criminal world. Each fighter has a different style, but they all share one thing. They are willing to do whatever it takes to complete the mission. The Six Seas has turned Ito into the highest priority target, and everyone involved understands that failure could have deadly consequences. Ito eventually finds himself trapped in a dangerous situation. He is surrounded by enemies, and there is no easy escape. He immediately realizes that the attack has been carefully planned. The criminals are not simply trying to kill him, they are trying to separate him from Reina. Ito refuses to let that happen. The first attacker comes at him with overwhelming speed. Ito blocks the initial strike and counters immediately, but another enemy attacks from behind. Ito barely avoids the blow and responds with a powerful combination that sends his opponent crashing into the room. More attackers continue entering, turning the location into a battlefield. Ito fights with everything he has. The action becomes increasingly brutal as he moves from one opponent to another. He uses his hand, feet, weapons, and the surrounding environment to survive. His opponents are trained killers, but Ito has something they do not: desperation. He is not fighting for money, reputation, or orders. He is fighting because a little girl is depending on him. The battle pushes Ito to his physical limits. He is cut and beaten, and his breathing becomes heavier. Still, he refuses to stop. When one attacker manages to pin him down, Ito finds a way to break free and immediately turns the situation around. Eventually, Ito clears a path and reaches Reina, but before they can escape, another threat appears. This time, the enemy is not an ordinary soldier. The arrival immediately changes the atmosphere, because Ito recognizes the person standing in front of him as someone connected to his old world. The fight becomes more personal, and Ito understands that the Six Seas is deliberately using people from his past to break him psychologically. Ito tries to keep Reina away from the violence, but there is nowhere safe to hide. He tells her to stay back and promises that he will return. Then he steps forward. The confrontation is vicious. The two fighters exchange blows at close range, neither giving the other enough space to recover. Ito is already injured, but his opponent continues attacking the same damaged areas of his body. Ito responds with heavier strikes, using every ounce of strength he has left. For a moment it appears that Ito may lose. His opponent knocks him down and prepares to finish him, but Ito refuses to accept defeat. He rises again and attacks with renewed determination. The fight eventually ends with Ito standing, but he knows that he has barely survived. After the battle, Fatih helps Ito escape with Reina, but the damage has been done. The Six Seas now knows exactly where Ito is and how he is moving. The organization is getting closer to catching them. Aryan watches everything from the shadows. He knows Ito is exhausted. He also knows that the people around Ito are beginning to disappear. If he waits long enough, Ito will eventually have nowhere left to go. But Aryan's connection with Ito creates an internal conflict. Part of him still remembers the friendship they once had. Another part knows that the criminal world they belong to does not allow weakness. If Aryan refuses to complete his mission, the Six Seas may turn against him as well. For Ito, there is no longer any doubt. He knows that his old friend will eventually come for him. The two men have reached a point where their past cannot save them. They may remember fighting together, protecting each other, and sharing the same dreams. But those memories are now buried beneath years of bloodshed. As Ito prepares for the next stage of his escape, he looks at Reina and realizes that the only way to give her a real chance at survival is to face the organization head on. Running has kept them alive, but eventually Ito will have to stop running. And when that moment comes, he will have to fight through the people he once trusted most. Ito realizes that escaping the Six Seas is becoming almost impossible. Every route is being watched, every safe location is becoming dangerous, and the people helping him are being dragged into the conflict. The organization is no longer interested in simply bringing him back. They want to make sure everyone understands what happens when someone betrays them. Ito knows that the longer he runs, the more innocent people will suffer because of him. Meanwhile, Aryan continues moving closer to Ito. He has spent enough time studying the situation to understand that Ito's biggest weakness is not his injuries, it is Reina. Ito will take any amount of punishment if it means keeping the girl alive. Aryan knows that if he can force Ito into a situation where Reina is threatened, Ito will expose himself. But Aryan also begins to question his own orders. He remembers the men Ito used to be before the Six Seas consumed their lives. They had once fought together, survived dangerous situations together, and trusted each other completely. Now they are standing on opposite sides of a war that neither of them expected to fight. Ito and Fatih attempt to move Reina through another part of the city, hoping to avoid the organization's patrols. They are careful, but the Six Seas has already gathered enough information to predict their movements. Suddenly, armed men appear from different directions. Ito immediately realizes that they have been surrounded. Fatih takes Reina away from the main entrance, while Ito stays behind to slow the attackers. The first wave charges forward, and Ito responds with a combination of speed and violence. He punches one enemy into a wall, avoids another attack, and uses a nearby weapon to defend himself against multiple opponents. But there are too many of them. Ito is forced to move constantly. Every time he knocks one attacker down, another takes his place. His injuries are becoming more serious, and his strength is slowly disappearing. Still, he keeps fighting because he knows that if he falls, Reina will be captured. The battle moves through several rooms and corridors. Ito uses the narrow spaces to prevent the attackers from surrounding him. He attacks one enemy, immediately turns toward another, and keeps moving before anyone can gain control. His fighting style becomes increasingly desperate, but that desperation makes him even more dangerous. Eventually, Ito finds himself facing a particularly skilled opponent. This fighter is not intimidated by Ito's reputation and attacks without hesitation. Their fight is faster and more technical than the previous battles. Both men exchange powerful strikes, and Ito is forced to defend himself while searching for an opening. The opponent manages to injure Ito badly, but Ito refuses to stay down. He absorbs the punishment and eventually finds a moment to counterattack. After a brutal exchange, Ito manages to defeat him. But before Ito can recover, another enemy appears. The constant attacks are beginning to take their toll. Fatih realizes that they cannot continue like this. He tells Ito that they need to reach a location where they can regroup, but Ito knows the Six Seas will continue following them. He believes that the only way to stop the pursuit is to confront the people responsible for it. At the same time, Aryan receives new information about Ito's location. Instead of immediately attacking, he decides to let the other fighters weaken Ito further. Aryan knows that a direct confrontation between them could become unpredictable. He wants Ito exhausted before they finally meet. Aryan's strategy begins working. Ito is becoming slower. His injuries are getting worse, and he has barely had time to recover between battles. Yet his determination remains unchanged. Every time he sees Reina, he remembers why he is still standing. The girl has lost almost everything. Her family is gone, her home has been destroyed, and the only person protecting her is a man who once worked for the same organization responsible for her suffering. Ito understands that he cannot undo what happened to her, but he can make sure she survives. This realization changes him. Ito is no longer simply trying to escape the Six Seas. He is beginning to accept that his old life must end. He cannot return to the organization, cannot continue being an enforcer, and cannot pretend that the violence he committed never happened. For years, Ito believed loyalty meant following orders. Now he understands that real loyalty means protecting the people who cannot protect themselves. But this new belief comes with a terrible price. The Six Seas is preparing its most dangerous fighters for the final pursuit, and Aryan is getting closer. Ito knows that the next encounter will be different. There will be no easy escape and no second chance. As the night grows darker, Ito prepares himself for what is coming. He checks his injuries, gathers whatever weapons he can find, and makes sure Reina is protected. Then he hears that Aryan has finally arrived. The two former friends are now only moments away from facing each other. Ito knows that Aryan may be the one person capable of understanding why he betrayed the Six Seas, but he also knows that understanding does not mean forgiveness. And when the two men finally meet, their friendship will be tested by years of blood, betrayal, and violence. Aryan finally steps into the open, and the atmosphere immediately changes. Ito knows that this is not another ordinary attack. Aryan is not one of the disposable soldiers the Six Seas sends to overwhelm him. He is someone who understands Ito completely, someone who knows his fighting style, his habits, and the way he reacts under pressure. More importantly, Arya knows exactly where Ito's loyalty truly lies now. The moment the two men face each other, years of friendship and violence seem to collide at once. Aryan tries to make Ito understand the reality of the situation. The Six Seas has already decided that Ito is a traitor, and there is no path back for him. If Ito gives up Reina, perhaps he can still survive. But Ito refuses. He has already crossed the line, and there is no way he will abandon the girl after everything she has suffered. Aryan realizes that words will not change his mind. The only option left is violence. The fight begins suddenly. Aryan attacks with speed and precision, forcing Ito to react immediately. Ito blocks the first strike, counters with a powerful combination, and the two men move through the area exchanging blows. Unlike Ito's previous battles, this confrontation is highly personal. Neither man needs to explain what is at stake. They both understand it. Aryan's advantage is his knowledge of Ito. He knows when Ito is likely to attack and when he is likely to defend. He uses that knowledge to anticipate Ito's movements, landing several strikes that force Ito backward. Ito is already badly injured from the earlier battles, and Aryan takes advantage of every weakness. But Ito has changed as well. The man Aryan remembers is no longer the same person. Ito is now fighting with a different kind of determination. He is not trying to prove that he is stronger. He is trying to protect someone. Every time Aryan knocks him down, Ito gets back up because he knows Reina is waiting behind him. The battle becomes increasingly brutal. Ito and Aryan crash through rooms. Furniture breaks around them, and neither fighter gives the other time to recover. Aryan lands a series of heavy attacks, but Ito responds with equal force. Their movements reveal years of experience fighting at the highest level. For a moment, Ito gains the advantage and forces Aryan against a wall, but Aryan quickly turns the situation around and attacks Ito's injured body. Ito struggles to stay on his feet, but he continues fighting. Then Aryan notices something. Ito is no longer fighting like the ruthless killer he once knew. He is holding back. Ito has opportunities to deliver potentially fatal attacks, but he does not take them. Aryan realizes that Ito is trying to end the fight without killing his old friend. That hesitation gives Aryan an opening. He attacks again and knocks Ito down. But before Aryan can finish him, outside circumstances interrupt the confrontation. The conflict surrounding them continues to grow, and more members of the Six Seas are approaching. Aryan realizes that the organization is not going to wait forever. Ito manages to escape with Reina and Fatih, but he is now severely weakened. The fight with Aryan has shown him that his old friend is still one of the few people capable of stopping him. If they meet again under different circumstances, the result could be very different. Aryan watches Ito disappear. Although he has not completed his mission, he does not immediately pursue him. Something about the confrontation has affected him. He remembers the friendship they once shared and begins questioning whether he really wants to be the person who kills Ito. But the Six Seas has no patience for hesitation. The organization begins putting pressure on Aryan. They remind him that failure is not tolerated. If he cannot eliminate Ito, someone else will be sent to do it. Aryan understands the message clearly. His own position is becoming unstable. Meanwhile, Ito and Fatih reach a temporary hiding place. Ito is exhausted and barely able to move properly. Fatih tries to treat his wounds, but both men know that medical care alone will not solve the problem. The organization will keep coming. Reina watches Ito silently. She understands that he is suffering because he chose to save her. Although she is still frightened, she has begun to trust him. For Ito, that trust is more important than anything he has ever received from the criminal world. Fatih tells Ito that they need to find a way out before sunrise, but Ito knows there is unfinished business. He cannot simply leave while the Six Seas continues hunting them. If he runs, the organization may eventually find Reina again. Ito decides that he must strike back. Instead of waiting for the next attack, he begins planning an assault against the people hunting him. He knows it will be extremely dangerous, but he has reached a point where survival alone is no longer enough. He wants to destroy the threat at its source. At the same time, Aryan makes a decision of his own. He may still be connected to the Six Seas, but his feelings about Ito are becoming impossible to ignore. The friendship they once had has not completely disappeared. Deep inside, Arya knows that Ito's decision to protect Reina was not meaningless. But before either man can choose his final side, the Six Seas unleashes another wave of violence. And this time, they send fighters who are not interested in capturing Ito alive. The Six Seas has now decided that Ito has become too dangerous to live alive. Instead of trying to bring him back, the organization orders a full-scale assault designed to destroy him and everyone protecting him. Ito knows that the situation has reached a point where there is no longer any possibility of returning to his old life. If he wants Rena to survive, he must face the organization and eliminate the people coming after them. Ita and Fatih move carefully through the city, searching for a location where they can prepare for the coming attack. Ito is still suffering from his injuries, but he refuses to rest for long. He knows that his enemies are not going to give him time to recover. Every minute matters, and the longer he waits, the stronger the Six Seas becomes. Meanwhile, the organization sends another group of elite fighters. These are not ordinary criminals. They are trained specifically for close combat, and they have been given permission to use whatever methods are necessary. Their orders are simple: find Ito, kill him, and bring Reina back. The attackers eventually locate the group. Ito immediately senses that something is wrong. The silence around the building feels unnatural and he realizes they have been surrounded. Fatih takes Reina to a safer position while Ito prepares to face the attackers alone. The first wave enters quickly. Ito fights with everything he has left. He moves through the building using walls, doors, furniture, and weapons to keep his opponents from surrounding him. But the number of attackers continues increasing. Every time Ito defeats one fighter, another appears. The battle becomes a brutal test of endurance. Ito is already exhausted and his injuries make every movement painful. But the more pressure he faces, the more aggressive he becomes. He stops worrying about preserving energy and starts fighting purely to survive. His punches become heavier, his attacks become faster, and his movements become increasingly desperate. At the same time, Fatih tries to keep Rena hidden. He knows that if the attackers reach her, everything Ito has fought for will be lost. He moves her through another section of the building while Ito continues holding the enemies back. Then a new fighter appears. This opponent is far more dangerous than the others. Ito immediately realizes that he is facing someone with exceptional combat ability. The two men engage in a vicious close-range battle, trading powerful strikes and using the environment around them. Ito is pushed to the edge. His opponent manages to land several devastating blows, forcing Ito to the ground. For a moment, it appears that Ito may finally be finished, but he hears movement nearby and realizes that the attackers are getting closer to Reina. That gives him the strength to stand again. Ito attacks with renewed determination. He uses every technique he has learned throughout his violent life and eventually defeats his opponent. But instead of celebrating, he immediately moves toward Reina. The fight has cost him even more strength. Fatih tells him that they need to leave immediately. But before they can escape, they discover that another group has already blocked their route. The Six Seas has anticipated everything. Ito realizes that they are being pushed exactly where the organization wants them. The enemy is controlling the battlefield, forcing Ito deeper into a situation where escape becomes impossible. Then Aryan appears again. This time his presence is different. He is no longer simply following orders. He has begun to understand that the Six Seas is willing to sacrifice anyone to eliminate Ito. Even Aryan himself could eventually become expendable. Ito and Aryan face each other once again, but there is no immediate attack. Aryan asks Ito why he is willing to risk everything for Reina. Ito's answer is simple: because someone has to protect her. Aryan understands. For the first time, he begins questioning the entire system they have spent years serving. The Six Seas demanded absolute loyalty, but it never showed loyalty to its own people. Anyone who became inconvenient could be eliminated. Aryan realizes that Ito's betrayal may not have been weakness. It may have been the first truly independent decision either of them had made. But before the conversation can continue, another group of enemies attacks. Aryan suddenly finds himself caught between two sides. He has to decide whether to follow the organization or protect the man who was once his closest friend. For several seconds he hesitates. Then Aryan makes his choice. He turns against the attackers. The decision shocks Ito. After years of separation and conflict, Aryan finally chooses their old bond over the Six Seas. Together, the two former friends fight against the criminals surrounding them. Their teamwork immediately changes the battle. Ito knows Aryan's movements and Aryan knows Ito's. They move together almost instinctively, covering each other's weaknesses and attacking enemies from different angles. It reminds them of the time before the organization destroyed their friendship. But the Six Seas has far more resources. More enemies continue arriving, and the two men realize they cannot fight forever. They need to create an escape route for Rena before they are overwhelmed. Aryan tells Ito to take Rena and leave. Ito refuses to abandon him. Aryan insists that this is his choice. For once, he is willing to accept the consequences of standing against the organization. Ito finally understands. The friendship between them may have been damaged by years of violence, but it is not completely dead. Ito takes Reina and moves toward the exit, while Aryan remains behind to slow the attackers. Behind them, the sound of fighting grows louder. But the Six Seas is not finished. The organization's most dangerous enforcers are still waiting, and the final confrontation is approaching fast. Ito has saved Reina once. Aryan has chosen his side. Now they must survive the people powerful enough to destroy them both. Ito escapes with Reina while Aryan stays behind to slow down the Six's forces. For the first time since the Nightmare began, Ito has a chance to create some distance between himself and the organization. But he knows Aryan cannot hold them back forever. The people hunting them are too numerous, and the organization has already shown that it will sacrifice anyone who stands in its way. Ito and Rena continue moving through the city, but their escape is interrupted when another group of criminals discovers them. Ito is exhausted, but there is no time to recover. He immediately places himself between Rena and the attackers. The criminals surround him from different directions, believing that his injuries have finally made him vulnerable. They are wrong. Ito attacks the closest enemy and immediately turns toward the next. He fights through the group with a combination of speed and raw power, using anything available to protect Rena. Every strike is delivered with desperation because Ito knows that even one mistake could put the girl in the hands of the Six Seas. The attackers manage to overwhelm him for a moment, but Ito finds a way to escape their formation. He grabs Rena and moves toward another route. The chase continues through the city, with the Six Seas constantly closing the distance. Back at the previous location, Aryan continues fighting. He knows that he has now become a target himself. By turning against the organization, he has committed the same betrayal as Ito. But unlike before, Aryan no longer cares about the consequences. He has finally realized that the life he has been living is nothing more than a cycle of violence, where loyalty is demanded but never returned. Aryan fights through several attackers, but eventually he is confronted by one of the organization's strongest fighters. The two engage in a brutal battle, and Aryan is forced to defend himself while trying to keep the enemy away from Ito's escape route. The fight becomes increasingly violent. Aryan takes several heavy blows, but he refuses to retreat. He knows that every second he buys gives Ito and Reina a better chance of escaping. The man who once hunted Ito is now risking his own life to protect him. Eventually, Erin manages to break away and follows Ito. Meanwhile, Ito reaches a temporary safe location. Reina is exhausted and terrified while Ito is barely able to stand. He realizes that the girl needs to leave the city immediately. But there is still one major problem. The Six Seas knows where they are going. Ito contacts someone who may be able to help them escape. The plan is simple. Reina will be taken somewhere the organization cannot reach, while Ito remains behind to deal with the people pursuing them. But Ito knows that this could be a one-way mission. He looks at Reina and understands that he may not survive the night. Still, he refuses to tell her how dangerous the situation has become. He simply tells her that everything will be okay. Then Aryan arrives. Ito is surprised to see him alive. Aryan is badly injured, but he has managed to escape the organization. The two men briefly discuss what has happened. There is no need for long explanations. Both understand that their lives have changed permanently. Aryan tells Ito that the Six Seas will continue hunting them until the organization itself is destroyed. Ito agrees. They decide to make one final stand. Instead of running endlessly, Ito and Aryan prepare to attack the people responsible for the entire operation. Their objective is not simply revenge. They want to create enough chaos for Reina to disappear safely. The plan requires them to enter territory controlled by the Six Seas. It is an extremely dangerous decision, but they have little choice. As they move toward their target, Ito remembers the life he once lived. He remembers the people he killed, the orders he followed, and the fear he used to create. Now he understands that he cannot erase those actions. The only thing he can do is make a different choice from this moment forward. Aryan has reached the same conclusion. The two men enter the enemy's territory together. Almost immediately they are attacked. The fight begins with several armed criminals, but Ito and Aryan move as a team. They use their combined experience to break through the first line of defense. Ito takes the direct route while Aryan attacks from another angle, and every person connected to Ito could become a target. His only hope is to find someone he can trust, although trust is something that has almost disappeared from his life. Back in the criminal world, Ito's betrayal becomes a major problem for the Six Seas. He is not just another low-level member who has disappeared. He is one of their elite enforcers, someone who knows important information about the organization's operations. More importantly, his decision to protect Reina could encourage others to question their own loyalty. The leaders cannot allow that possibility. They need to make an example of him. Aryan is eventually brought into the situation. Unlike the other criminals, Aryan has a complicated history with Ito. They were once close, and there was a time when they fought side by side. But their paths changed as the organization grew more powerful. Aryan became deeply involved in the criminal world, while Ito became one of the organization's most feared enforcers. Even though years have passed, the two men still understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Aryan is given the task of dealing with Ito, but his personal connection makes the situation complicated. He knows exactly how dangerous Ito can be when cornered. At the same time, Aryan has his own ambitions and does not intend to risk everything simply because of their old friendship. He understands that the organization rewards loyalty and destroys anyone who stands against it. Meanwhile, Ito begins preparing for the inevitable attack. He knows that eventually someone will find him. His injuries and exhaustion are already becoming a problem, but he refuses to slow down. Every moment he spends protecting Reina gives the organization more time to locate him. He needs information when used trying to keep her calm. For Ito, protecting Reina is no longer just about saving one child. She represents the last chance he has to prove that he is more than the killer the Sixes created. For years, he believed violence was simply the way the world worked. Now he has finally realized that he can choose differently. But the organization does not care about his change of heart. They want the old Ito back, the ruthless enforcer who followed orders without asking questions. Since that man no longer exists, They have decided to destroy the new one. As night covers the city, Aryan finally moves closer to Ito's position. The two former friends are approaching their inevitable confrontation, and neither of them knows whether their history will matter when the fighting begins. Ito looks at Reina and realizes that the next battle may be the most dangerous one yet. He knows Aryan is coming, and deep down he knows that if Aryan is the one standing between him and Reina's freedom, there may be no way to avoid fighting the man he once called his brother. The tension reaches a new level when Ito realizes that Aryan is no longer searching for him from a distance. He is moving directly toward him, and that changes everything. Ito knows Aryan better than almost anyone else. He knows how intelligent he is, how patient he can be, and how dangerous he becomes when he has a clear objective. Unlike the criminals Ito has already fought, Aryan does not need to prove anything. He simply needs to find the right moment to strike. Ito tries to move Reina again before Aryan can reach them, but the Six Seas has already begun closing every possible escape route. Their influence is everywhere, and people connected to Ito are becoming increasingly afraid. Fatih realizes that they cannot keep running through the city forever. Eventually, they will have to stand and fight. Meanwhile, Aryan begins assembling a group of skilled fighters. He knows that final pursuit, and Aryan is getting closer. Itu knows that the next encounter will be different. There will be no easy escape and no second chance. As the night grows darker, Ito prepares himself for what is coming. He checks his injuries, gathers whatever weapons he can find, and makes sure Reina is protected. Then he hears that Aryan has finally arrived. The two former friends are now only moments away from facing each other. Ito knows that Aryan may be the one person capable of understanding why he betrayed the Six Seas, but he also knows that understanding does not mean forgiveness. And when the two men finally meet, their friendship will be tested by years of blood, betrayal, and violence. Aryan finally steps into the open, and the atmosphere immediately changes. Ito knows that this is not another ordinary attack. Aryan is not one of the disposable soldiers the Six Seas sends to overwhelm him. He is someone who understands Ito completely, someone who knows his fighting style, his habits, and the way he reacts under pressure. More importantly, Arya knows exactly where Ito's loyalty truly lies now. The moment the two men face each other, years of friendship and violence seem to collide at once. Aryan tries to make Ito understand the reality of the situation. The Six Seas has already decided that Ito is a traitor, and there is no path back for him. If Ito gives up Reina, perhaps he can still survive. But Ito refuses. He has already crossed the line, and there is no way he will abandon the girl after everything she has suffered. Aryan realizes that words will not change his mind. The only option left is violence. The fight begins suddenly. Aryan attacks with speed and precision, forcing Ito to react immediately. Ito blocks the first strike, counters with a powerful combination, and the two men move through the area could be eliminated. Aryan realizes that Ito's betrayal may not have been weakness. It may have been the first truly independent decision either of them had made. But before the conversation can continue, another group of enemies attacks. Aryan suddenly finds himself caught between two sides. He has to decide whether to follow the organization or protect the man who was once his closest friend. For several seconds he hesitates. Then Aryan makes his choice. He turns against the attackers. The decision shocks Ito. After years of separation and conflict, Aryan finally chooses their old bond over the six seas. Together, the two former friends fight against the criminals surrounding them. Their teamwork immediately changes the battle. Ito knows Aryan's movements and Aryan knows Ito's. They move together almost instinctively, covering each other's weaknesses and attacking enemies from different angles. It reminds them of the time before the organization destroyed their friendship. But the Six Seas has far more resources. More enemies continue arriving, and the two men realize they cannot fight forever. They need to create an escape route for Rena before they are overwhelmed. Ayan tells Ito to take Rena and leave. Ito refuses to abandon him. Aryan insists that this is his choice. For once, he is willing to accept the consequences of standing against the organization. Ito finally understands. The friendship between them may have been damaged by years of violence, but it is not completely dead. Ito takes Reina and moves toward the exit, while Aryan remains behind to slow the attackers. Behind them, the sound of fighting grows louder. But the Six Seas is not finished. The organization's most dangerous enforcers are still waiting, and the final confrontation is approaching fast. Ito has saved Reina once. Aryan has chosen his side. Now they must survive the people powerful enough to destroy them both. Ito escapes with Reina while Aryan stays behind to slow down the Six's forces. For the first time since the Nightmare began, Ito has a chance to create some distance between himself and the organization. But he knows Aryan cannot hold them back forever. Ito and Aryan have reached the heart of the Six Seas operation, and there is no turning back now. They have fought through countless enemies, suffered serious injuries, and sacrificed almost everything they had. Their only objective is to create a path for Reina to escape. But the organization has been waiting for them, and the final stage of the conflict is about to begin. The two men move deeper into the building, expecting another group of attackers. Instead, they encounter an enemy who has been waiting specifically for Ito. The confrontation immediately becomes personal. This is not simply another assassin sent to complete a mission. This fighter represents the organization's belief that betrayal must always be punished. Ito steps forward. Aryan is ready to help, but Ito knows he must face this enemy himself. The fight begins with brutal close range combat. Both men attack without hesitation, and the battle quickly becomes one of the most dangerous Ito has faced. Ito is already badly wounded, but his opponent is fresh and extremely skilled. He takes advantage of Ito's injuries and repeatedly targets his weak points. Ito is knocked down several times, but each time he forces himself back to his feet. The difference now is that Ito is no longer fighting simply to survive. He is fighting to end the life he once lived. Every attack represents everything he has lost and everything he is trying to protect. He remembers the people he once killed for the Six Seas, and he realizes that he cannot change the past, but he can decide what he does with the life he has left. The battle becomes increasingly savage. Ito and his opponent exchange powerful strikes, moving through the building as furniture breaks and walls are damaged. Ito's body is exhausted, but his determination continues to push him forward. Eventually, Ito finds an opening. He attacks with everything he has left and manages to defeat the fighter. But there is no time to rest. More enemies arrive. Arian joins Ito, and together they fight through the remaining forces. Their teamwork is now almost effortless. They understand each other's movements without speaking. Whenever Ito is surrounded, Arian creates an opening. Whenever Aryan is attacked from behind, Ito immediately responds. For the first time in years, the two men are fighting side by side again. But their opponents continue coming. The Six Seas has turned the building into a death trap. Ito and Aryan are surrounded from multiple directions, and there seems to be no end to the attackers. Then Aryan is separated from Ito. Several enemies surround him, forcing him into a desperate fight. Ito tries to reach him, but more attackers block his path. Aryan fights alone. He is exhausted and heavily injured, but he refuses to surrender. He remembers why he made his choice. He does not want to spend the rest of his life obeying people who treat human beings as disposable weapons. Aryan manages to defeat several enemies, but eventually he is overwhelmed. Ito finally breaks through and reaches him. The two men stand together again. They are both badly injured, but neither is willing to leave the other behind. They continue fighting until they reach the final area. Meanwhile, Reina is being moved towards safety. Ito's entire plan depends on keeping her away from the Sixties long enough for her to disappear. But the organization discovers where she is. A new pursuit begins. Ito realizes that the final battle must end quickly. If Rena is captured, everything they have done will be meaningless. He pushes forward with renewed determination. The final confrontation becomes a brutal battle of survival. Ito attacks relentlessly, refusing to give his enemies any opportunity to recover. Aryan supports him, but both men are reaching the absolute limit of their endurance. Eventually, Ito faces the final obstacle standing between him and Reina's freedom. The battle is intense and chaotic. Ito is knocked down, rises again, and continues attacking. His opponent is equally determined, and neither side gives up. Ito eventually manages to gain the advantage. The fight ends with Ito standing, but he is barely conscious. He immediately searches for Rena. When he finally finds her, he realizes that she is alive and has a chance to escape. For a brief moment, the violence around them becomes quiet. Ito looks at Reina and understands that all the pain he suffered was worth it. But the danger is not completely over. The Six Seas still exist, and the consequences of Ito's betrayal have not disappeared. Aryan arrives wounded but alive. The two friends look at each other, knowing that they have survived something that should have killed them both. They have lost almost everything, but they have gained something they never had before: freedom from the organization that controlled their lives. Still, Ito knows that survival comes with a price. He cannot forget the people he killed, and he cannot pretend that one heroic decision erases years of violence. All he can do is make sure Rainer gets the future he never had. As the night begins to fade, Ito prepares to make his final decision. He has one last responsibility. He must make sure Reina is completely safe, even if it means giving up his own chance at a peaceful life. And after everything that has happened, the final moments will reveal whether Ito can truly escape the darkness that has followed him for so long. After surviving the endless violence of the night, Ito finally reaches the point where he can think beyond simple survival. He has spent the entire journey fighting the Six Seas, protecting Rena, and trying to escape the criminal world that once controlled every part of his life. Now, with the organization weakened and his enemies defeated, he has one final responsibility: making sure Rena has a chance to live a normal life. Ito takes Rena away from the center of the conflict and searches for a safe place where she can remain hidden. For the first time, there are no immediate attackers surrounding them. There are no orders coming through a phone, no criminals waiting outside the door, and no one demanding that Ito return to the life he abandoned. But the silence does not feel completely peaceful. Ito knows that the memories of everything he has done will remain with him. Aryan is also dealing with the consequences of his choices. By turning against the Six Seas, he has destroyed his own position inside the organization. The friendship between him and Ito has been tested by years of violence, betrayal, and separation. But their final battle together proves that their bond was never completely gone. Aryan finally understands that loyalty to a criminal organization means nothing if that loyalty requires him to destroy the people he once cared about. Ito and Aryan have both spent years believing that violence was the only way to survive. The events of this night force them to question that belief. Ito's decision to protect Reina showed that even someone who has lived as a killer can make a different choice. Aryan's decision to help Ito showed that a person trapped inside a violent system can still choose to break away from it. For Ito, however, there is still a painful reality. He cannot erase his past. The people he killed, the orders he followed, and the years he spent serving the Six Seas will always be part of his story. Saving Reina does not magically make him innocent, but it gives his life a new purpose. Instead of continuing the cycle of violence, he chooses to protect someone who has already lost everything. Reina represents the possibility of a future beyond the criminal world. Ito makes sure that she is taken somewhere safe, away from the people who destroyed her family. He knows that she may never completely forget what happened, but at least she now has the opportunity to grow up without being controlled by the Six Seas. Aryan, meanwhile, has to decide what comes next for him. He can no longer return to the organization, and the criminal world he once knew has changed forever. His decision to stand with Ito has made him an enemy of the same people he once served. The two men understand that their paths may separate again, but this time they are not enemies. They have survived the night together, and that experience has changed both of them. Ito looks back at everything that happened. The journey began with a single decision. He refused to kill an innocent child. That one act of compassion transformed his entire life. It turned him from a respected enforcer into a hunted criminal, forced him to fight against his former friends, and pushed him into a war against the organization he once served. Yet that decision also gave him something he had never possessed before, a reason to fight for something meaningful. The Six Seas built its power through fear. It taught its members that obedience was more important than morality and that anyone could be sacrificed for the organization. Ito finally understands that this system only survives because people continue accepting it. By choosing Reina, he rejected that entire philosophy. The final moments are quieter than the violent battles that came before. The city begins to return to normal while the survivors of the conflict are left to deal with what happened. Ito knows that his future will not be easy, but he is no longer running because he is afraid. He is moving forward because he has something worth protecting. Aryan has also changed. The man who once followed orders without questioning them has finally seen the truth behind the organization. Their world was built on fear, and the moment someone stopped being useful, they became disposable. Ito and Aryan may never completely escape the consequences of their past, but they have broken the cycle. And that is what makes Ito's journey so important. He began the story as a feared killer who was willing to do anything for the Six Seas. By the end, he becomes a man willing to sacrifice everything for an innocent child. His greatest victory is not defeating an enemy or surviving a brutal fight. His greatest victory is proving that he can choose who he wants to be. Reina is finally given the chance to live. Ito has lost his old life, but he has gained something far more valuable, a conscience and a purpose. The night that began with bloodshed eventually comes to an end, leaving behind a story about violence, loyalty, betrayal, friendship, and redemption. Ito cannot change the darkness of his past, but he can refuse to let that darkness control his future.